Mr. Mayor, it's time.
I'd like to call this special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales.
Here. Here.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tempore Morales. Can you please provide us with your password?
Yes. DOU032223.
Thank you. And what is your location?
Home?
Thank you. And is anyone else with you?
No.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitch Lindeman,
Present.
Councilmember Dania Acosta. Present. Councilmember Ray Shelton,
Present.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva,
Here.
City Manager Ana Urquijo,
Present.
City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons. City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons. City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can see that the city attorney is present.
If you would please join me in standing for a moment of silence. We lost one of our former employees here recently, Jose Hurtado. He was employed at the city from September 4th, 1973 through October 11th, 1988 in the Public Works Department. So please join me with a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Item number 3, persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Ms. Andrade,
Yes, Mr.
thank you. First, we'd like to invite Kim Peralta, if you please come to the podium.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me. I approached you today to talk about a little bit about what I do. I work for Suarez Brokerage here in Douglas, Arizona. I've lived here all my life. I wanted to let you guys know that we are often employed to import and export products into Mexico and out of Mexico. Right now, we're having a little bit of a dilemma with our produce season coming around, and our port of entry is limiting the timeframes when we can import products into the US. We import produce from 9 a.m. to 1:30 in the afternoon. And in the next coming months is our peak season, and it's not going to be enough time for us to bring the volume that we want to see over at Fiesta Canning. So I wanted to approach you all to let you know that we need help in persuading our port of entry to allow us to continue to cross our produce from 9 a.m. till 5 in the afternoon, similar to all the other products that we cross during the day. One of the issues is that our port of entry is not well equipped with an identifier when it comes to finding pests in our shipments. And so we asked also for help in allowing them to maybe hire the adequate personnel so that it doesn't affect us directly. I know that during our peak season, we have lots of different citizens coming into Agua Prieta and into Douglas, and it affects our community directly because they use our hotels, our restaurants, and they visit our merchants. And so what we want to see is for them to continue to cross through our port of entry, to not go through different port of entries. And it would be nice if we could arrange a meeting with the mayor and maybe Ana Urquijo and the port of entry to see what we can do to find a solution. I did write up a letter for you all. You have it, and it's got plenty of detail on there, and I'm available for any questions that you all might have.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Ms. Peralta, we're not allowed in this portion of the agenda to be able to ask questions and such. So we appreciate it, and I'll ask staff if they would mind setting up a meeting that we can be at so that we can express these concerns.
Okay, the letters were also sent to your emails, so let me know if you need anything.
We have a
Thank you.
hard copy with us also.
Okay,
So
thank you
thank
for your time.
Ms.
you very
Peraza, I
much.
will follow up with you directly.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Alfredo Acuña,
Yes, sir.
please.
Hi, good afternoon to everybody. Sir, I'm going to be extremely brief, okay? I came to the other meeting, which it was like, I don't know, month and a half. And don't seems like accomplish anything, you know? The reason I'm here is because I went over and visit the chief of police today to find out who is responsible for Chino Road, okay? Which is, I like to include the word unsafe. It's extremely unsafe. And I believe, dropping the speed from 35 to 15 is not going to solve the problem. It's even worse now. Do you travel to that road in the past?
Yes,
You did recently?
yes.
Okay, you do travel the road 50 miles an hour. If a car is behind you, it's going to push you. It's going to say move. So what I'm saying is the best solution is to close it because it's extremely unsafe. If it's no fines to repair it properly, I will say close will be better than unsafe. And, I'm trying to find out who is responsible. He mentioned ADOT, they call it. He said that's who repaired it in the past. And, I don't know if they are responsible or not. But, best thing to do, I will say, this is my personal opinion. Before somebody sue the city, to close it, because it is unsafe, no question about it. What was done, it didn't solve the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Acuña. And yes, it is an ongoing situation and we'll have Mr. Kehoe have a member of our staff to be able to contact you and explain. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but we'd be happy to sit down and explain it to you on where it's at and what we see as the future. Because we have received funding to be able to change the direction of that road to line up with 191.
I'm glad you mentioned funding, because in the past, they say, we don't know on which budget we will get the money.
Well, we know now.
The city does have the money, because if they were able to purchase Food City for $900,000, I'm pretty sure they will find out a way to come up with the money.
We have the funding now.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Acuña. Next item, number 4, presentation of awards. Today is a bittersweet day that we are choosing to honor our consul Ricardo Pineda Alvaran. And I say mixed emotions because he's leaving us, but we wanted to thank him personally on behalf of the council for the fine work that he's done to help the citizens of Douglas. And just so you know, of course, his primary responsibility is dealing with Mexican citizens who have issues here in the United States. However, he's been very much a partner with us, the city, to be able to put forward our desires and with the Mexican government all the way down to Mexico City. And so we're very grateful to that. And I'd like to just read a little bit background about this fine gentleman. Throughout his professional career, Ricardo Pineda Alvaran has served as consul of Mexico in Tucson from 2013 to 2019, consul of Mexico in Boise, Idaho from 2008 to 2013, consul general in charge in San Diego from 2007 to 2008, political advisor for border affairs at the Embassy of Mexico in Washington, D.C. from 1999 to 2005. Among other positions within the Mexican Foreign Service. Upon taking office in November of 2019 here in Douglas, the consul expressed that he assumes the responsibility of protecting and defending the rights and interests of Mexicans, as well as insisting and advising those compatriots who have suffered abuse or ill treatment in their labor relations or with authorities. At the same time, it seeks to strengthen relations of understanding and cooperation in matters of mutual interest between Douglas and Agua Prieta. He also has an assignment not only for Cochise County, but for Greenlee and Graham County, so he has to cover that entire area. Consul Ricardo Pineda Alvaran career ambassador, is originally from Mexico City and studied international relations at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He has a master's degree in national security from the National Defense College of Mexico and is an expert in international politics and economic analysis, particularly in the United States-Mexico relationship. The Consulate of Mexico in Douglas is responsible for Cochise County, Graham, and Greene counties, which share an 85-mile border with the state of Sonora, Mexico, and serves the port of entry in Douglas and Naco, Arizona. It is with great pleasure that I'd like to invite who I term as a friend to come up and receive this small token on our behalf, which reads as follows. On behalf of Mayor and Council and in recognition to the Honorable Ricardo Pineda Alvaran, Consul of Mexico, thank you for your dedicated service to the City of Douglas community, November 2019 through April of 2023. If the council will please join me for a picture. So to mention you brought a beautiful wife, Virginia. I can guarantee you, you're gonna get good kids without her. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Just very briefly, I just want to thank each and every one of you. And I want to thank also my colleagues from the Consulate of Mexico. Please stand. Levántense. And I do this because it's very important. This is probably the to me, the role they have played in the relation is outstanding, simple. From each and each one of them, I thank you for the great service that you have provided to both Mexico and the US, Arizona and Sonora, Douglas and Agua Prieta, and the rest of our communities. To the dear mayor and dear council members, I cannot tell you how moved I am for this acknowledgement, but time has come to return back to Mexico. And we are thrilled, my family and myself, we are thrilled to return back to Mexico, to headquarters, after more than 25 years for me of service in the US. So it has been very important. I keep the best of Douglas of Arizona being over here. We accomplished a lot. Working with your office, working with the mayor, working with several stakeholders in Douglas and the surrounding areas, we were able to accomplish different projects. The main one is going to be the border port, the two solution that we have found Mexico and the US to have a new border porting area. But our expectations are huge for us to trigger job creation, development, and a new role for this community, not only in Arizona, but for the United States, thanks to the opportunities that the USMCA provides to each and every one of us. So thank you for having me today. Thank you for this token of appreciation. It comes and goes with my heart. And I thank to this community everything that the community provides to us. It was quite unfortunate that we didn't do more because we go through 2 years of pandemic. And notwithstanding that, we were able to perform and to collaborate and cooperate. So this goes for every authority in the area, with the chief of police, no, guys from Border Patrol, from CBP at the border port, for the city itself. Thank you very much. It has been an honor for me to work here to represent Mexico and to do and to make the best of my effort in favor of our great communities. Thank you very much to all of you.
And Consul, you're very welcome to stay, but please don't feel obligated to stay along with your staff. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, safe travel. Item number 5, discussion decision on approvals. Item A, resolution number 23-1542. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, designating the finance director Alejandro Martinez as the city's chief fiscal officer for purposes of officially submitting the fiscal year expenditure limitation report to the Arizona Auditor General. Mr. Kiko or Alejandro, you want Alejandro lead off? Go for it, Alejandro.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. What you have in front of you is a resolution to authorize me to submit this report to the Arizona Auditor General at the end of this month and then again next year for fiscal year 2023.
And this is an annual occurrence.
Correct.
This is the first time for Alejandro, but this is an annual occurrence for us. May I have a motion, please?
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Lindeman.
I move that the mayor and council approve resolution number 23-1542.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lindeman, second by Mr. Baldanegro to approve resolution number 23-1542. Any questions or discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, please.
I just want to say, thank you, for, all your work. I know you're new here, but, it seems like you've grasped everything and you spewed right in. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Lindeman, thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Anyone else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Costa, yes, Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldanegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Calva,
Yes.
Mayor Potempo Morales,
yes,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5B, discussion decision on bid award to Lane Christensen Company for continued rehabilitation of well 14 by using the city of Chandler contract number PW 2-936-4357. Ms. Elise.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is a bid award to help put arsenic treatment on our well 14. That's a project we've had been ongoing. We did a slip lining and we're trying to get the arsenic treatment. If you remember, ADQ about 13 years ago lowered the limits that we could have on arsenic in the water. And it does require us to get a treatment system in place to kind of filter that arsenic out to get it below the allowable limits. Lane was the responsive bidder that put a proposal forward. And that's for $952,921. Of that amount, there's about 200,000 in there that is for helping us to replace the first media once we run it for a while. That amount, we think, we're going to see how it goes. We're hopeful we don't have to spend 200,000 of that because we're hoping it's going to be as simple as we think it is. But we just want it in there just in case, because we definitely don't want to break anything the first time we try to do it. So we're gonna leave it in there for now, and hopefully it'll be less than that when we actually get things going.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Shelton.
I move that the mayor and council approve the bid award to Lane Christensen Company for the rehabilitation of well number 14.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Baldanegro to approve the bid award to Lane Christensen Company. Questions or comments?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Lindeman.
Ms. Moore, excuse me. I seem to remember that the allowable parts per billion is now 0.03. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so it dropped from 0.5 milligrams per liter to 0.1. So it dropped significantly. And we did a new test when we did the slip lining, and we still need the treatment. We were hoping that over the time that had passed, maybe we would meet it just naturally, but we're not. And that's one of our better wells, at least when it was running back in, 15 years ago. It was a really good producing well. So we're hoping it'll be that again.
If I may,
Yes, please. Mr. Lindeman.
I'm just wondering, is there a timeline to where we'll be able to use our affluent, or is this a different subject for our parks and things like that?
I think in general, for sustainability, and obviously the AMA brought this up, we at some point, we would like to be able to reuse effluent in some way instead of pumping well water for things that don't require treated water. It's something we're working on with the wastewater treatment plant to get the effluent in a better condition. And hopefully we can get a plan to where we can reuse some of the well water, or some of the effluent, I should say, or recharge it or do something else with it productive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor.
Yes, please, Mrs. Acosta.
I know there's been some concern, citizen concern on this well mentioned in the past, due to the proximity of, the slag pile. Is that, a concern at all that we should be trying to address, or, something that could leach into that well?
I think we just keep a really close eye on our water in general for any kind of contaminants. You can tell just by the limits we're talking about here, they're very, very small, but we get monitored very closely, and we have to send our water samples out for testing to make sure that they're meeting those drinking limits. So I know it's a concern just in general. I can't say that, yes, of course, there's a slag pile there. We're aware of it, but we actually don't know where contaminants are coming from in general.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please? Mr. Baldanegro.
What's the depth of the well?
So the depth of the well, we've got a static water level of 237 feet. And I think we drilled it down to 500. Yeah,
That's where we're getting 800 gallons per minute, or that was before?
I think we're getting around 650 gallons per minute at this point. And that's just from our testing after the slip lining.
How long time do you need for this to get adequate?
So we still have to install the arsenic treatment, and then there's a whole top level pump house kind of thing that has to be installed as well. We're trying to get this done this year, all of the pieces.
Thank you, Mr. Baldanegro. Anyone else?
No.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldenegro.
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton.
Yes,
Councilmember Acosta. Yes. Councilmember Lindeman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
Item number 6, presentation discussion. Item A, presentation discussion on annexation strategies. You're gonna lead off, Zenia? Please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Waiting for the presentation to come up, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, so why should the city of Douglas consider annexation? In general, annexation simplifies boundaries, making the provision of city services easier and more efficient. It assures future development will be in accordance with the city's development and building code standards. It increases the assessed valuation of the city. It increases the city's population, and as a result, its share of state sales tax, motor vehicle fuel tax, revenue sharing of state income tax, federal revenue sharing, federal grants, and local transportation assistance fund. So why should the city consider annexation? Continued, annexation allows the city to collect property and sales tax from annexed parcels. Currently, and for the next 3 years, there are opportunities under the infrastructure grants that we might not see again. However, we are not able to request assistance for those areas until they have been annexed into the city. On August 14, 2019, Mayor and Council established an annexation policy through Resolution 19-1357, encouraging annexation as allowed by state statute. What does the annexation process look like? So if Mayor and Council approve of our annexation efforts, the annexation teams will file a blank petition in the county recorder's office with an attached description and an accurate map of the proposed annexation area. Once the blank petition is filed, a 30-day waiting period goes into effect. Within the last 15 days of the waiting period, the city will advertise in the paper, post public notices, and send letters in the mail to notify people about the city's desire to annex. It will also notify them about a future public hearing that will solely focus on annexation. Within the last 10 days of the waiting period, City Council must have a public hearing to discuss the annexation proposal. In order to have a successful annexation, the city must obtain within a year more than 1/2 of the persons owning real and personal property ownership, and 1/2 or more of the persons owning real and personal property for assessed valuation that would be subject to taxation by the city in the event of annexation. So 50% plus 1 of property owner signatures and at least 50% of assessed property values. After signatures are verified, Mayor and Council must approve the annexed parcels via ordinance. When the petition is complete, a copy of the signed petition must be filed with the city clerk, and the original must be filed in the office of the county recorder. A special city council meeting is then held to adopt the annexation ordinance. Annexation becomes final 30 days after the adoption of the ordinance if there are no protests or contests against it. So as you all may recall, we did attempt to annex Sunnyside Bay Acres within the last 1.5 to 2 years. And our first annexation attempt was a great learning experience, although unsuccessful. It taught us a lot. We learned the importance of prep time and the crucial role it plays when dealing with legally complicated processes such as this. Through trial and error, we learned that we have to track our progress in order to be as efficient as possible. And we learned that it is extremely important to have good, consistent outreach and communication between the city of Douglas and the communities that are to be annexed. We also learned that properly educating the public is crucial because misinformation is powerful and it spreads quickly. This time around, we are taking our time with the preparation phase, allowing us to carefully craft an annexation plan that has a higher chance of success than our previous attempt. We plan to develop a 5 to 10-year infrastructure plan that outlines our goals for capital improvement for the proposed annexed areas. New specialized teams have been created to focus on annexation. And with these teams, we are able to implement a staggered annexation plan, which means we can initiate annexing efforts for multiple areas, staggering them every 3 to 6 months. Misinformation is very harmful to our efforts, so this time around, we will have a bigger focus on educating the public about annexation. We will be tracking each team's progress from the beginning, allowing us to be more efficient. When we reach the action phase of the annexation process, we will implement new methods to improve outreach and communication between the city and the people that live in the proposed annexation areas. Recruiting annexation champions is one of the ways that we plan to improve outreach and communication. So this is the map of potential annexation areas. We are in the process also of updating our general plan. And so our city planner made this map for us so that we can include it in that. So speaking of the staggered approach, there we go. So we are proposing, at least initially, 4 areas of annexation staggered. Sunnyside Bay Acres, which was our last attempt, the westward reach out to the new commercial port of entry site, Perterville and North Perterville, and then the Northern Peak. So Sunnyside Bay Acres is the number 4 shaped area that's to the right of the map. The westward reach is the bright green. And then Perterville is the lower half of the yellow. That and North Perterville, and then the Northern Peak would be the lighter yellow up at the top. So let's focus on Sunnyside and Bay Acres. It's shaped like a number 4. It includes Sunnyside Bay Acres and the Bagwell Ranch area. It's located southeast of State Highway 80 as its northern limit, Lincoln Avenue as its eastern boundary, Applewhite Street to the south, northerly along Washington Avenue to the alley between 23rd and 24th Streets, then westerly to A Avenue to finish at Highway 80. This area has about 682 parcels in total, and it spans 709.28 acres or 1.1083 miles. The average parcel size in the area is about 1.04 acres or 0.0016 miles. And the full cash value of all the properties in this area is about $32,093,857. The westward reach area extends approximately 6 3/4 miles westward of existing Douglas city limits along the international border and straddling 1 to 2 miles north and south of State Highway 80 to Brooks Road. This does not include the Cochise College Park Unit 1 subdivision. The westward reach area has about 238 parcels in total, and it spans 6,914.02 acres or 10.8032 miles in total. Average parcel size in this area is about 29.05 acres or 0.0454 miles. The full cash value of all properties in this area is about $40,917,203. Perterville and North Perterville, located between Sulphur Springs and State Highway 191. North of State Highway 80, Perterville and North Perterville would be split by Oak Road, with North Perterville bound by Golf Course Road to the north. Perterville and North Perterville have about 912 parcels in total. Together, they span 975.78 acres or 1.5247 miles. The average parcel size is about 19.93 acres or 0.0311 miles. The full cash value of all properties in each area combined is about $46,206,404. And lastly, the Northern Peak is bound by Golf Course Road to the south, bound on the west by Plantation Road, Glen Road to the north, and Leslie Canyon Road to wrap around the current extent of the northern city limit, reserved from the several subdivisions to the north and east. The Northern Peak area has about 219 parcels in total. It spans 4,246.35 acres or 6.6349 miles. The average parcel size in this area is about 19.39 acres or 0.0303 miles. Full cash value of all properties in the area is about $18,760,278. So what's next? Mayor and council will be brought resolutions for each of the areas proposed to authorize annexation attempts. And what we need from you is to determine what order annexation should be approached in based on policy priorities. We'd like to recognize the annexation team that has gathered in recent months to research and develop new strategies based from past attempts and lessons learned to pave a path forward toward mayor and council's policy priority for annexation and growth. So Mr. Carlos Valdez, here's our annexation assistant, Edith Pulido, our administrative assistant, Rocio Garcia Pedrosa, human resources manager, William Osborne, city planner, and from the city manager's office, we have Mrs. Ana Urquijo, city manager, Mr. Luis Pedrosa, deputy city manager, and myself, Zenia Gonzalez, neighborhood resources and grants director. And we are ready to take any questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Does anybody have a question? Mr. Shelton, please.
What everybody has done has been an excellent job. And what I'd like to see though, a goal. What is our overall goal in doing this? We have all the specifics, but I think to get people on board, we need to write a specific statement or our goal for the Douglas area is to become one, and that because of becoming one, we can start looking to the future to having more jobs here in Douglas because it will unify us. So we can keep those students that graduate from Douglas High School, keep them here, not only here, but then coming back to enjoy the city that they were raised in. So it's we have all the specifics, but the a thoughtful goal in there. Why do we really want to do this? And it's to unify our city and this part of the world. If you live in Bay Acres or somewhere in some of these other areas, even if you live in Pearlville, if you're in Tucson, they might ask, where are you from? And they're going to say, I'm from Douglas. They don't say Bay Acres. They might say Pearlville, but it gives us that that sense that we're all together. And, like Bisbee, I remember when, it was, used to be just old Bisbee. And Warren was not part of it. Bakerville wasn't, San Jose wasn't, Penn Town wasn't, and San Luis wasn't, or San Luis. And now they're all one community. And there's no problem with it at all. So, I think that would be a good thing to tell people why we're doing it. To unify our area and to look to the future so that many of our students that graduate from Douglas can stay here or they can come back because there's jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else? Mr. Valdenegro, please.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you for the presentation, but if we have the signatures of people that want to join us, that want to become Douglas, part of Douglas, I think we should pursue that. If we have a lot of people there in Porterville, then that's here, we should pursue it. And hopefully everybody else comes along.
Yes, state statute establishes annexation area by size. And so if we could annex parcel by parcel, I think we would have started doing that already. Unfortunately, I think that we have to focus on an entire area, the way that it's outlined, and get the signatures and valuation as it states in statute.
This is the first time we knew about the La Colonia Bay Acres and all. We knew about a little bit of Sunnyside. And
Yes.
before my time, heard of it. So now we have the Northern Peak, did you say, and westward, where we want to go for the port of entry.
Yes, sir.
So, but it requires owner signatures, right?
Yes.
And where are we at with that signatures?
We haven't started the process, Mr. Valdenegro. We have to file our petition, and then there's a 30-day waiting period. And then we have to hold public hearings, and then we can start collecting petition signatures.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta, please.
Yes, I'm just curious, since we're so close to Cochise College, is there a reason why that couldn't be included, that area couldn't be included in this, or is there objections, or how does that work?
I'm thinking that maybe in the future, that will be an area that will be looked at for annexation. It wasn't included in part of this planning just because of the distance. We're only going what is required by statute. And unfortunately, that leaves the college a little bit out of reach. If we widen our annexation area, that means more petition signatures, more evaluation that has to be collected, which is why our approach is to do staggered annexations towards different areas.
I think Mrs. Acosta, correct me if I'm wrong, she was referring to Cochise College Park. That
No,
little-
Well,
No,
Cochise
all the way to
College Park.
and then all the way to the college.
It just seems like it's very close.
We're out
to-
there.
Yeah, I mean, we're out there already, so if these efforts are gonna start for this whole area, I know that it adds some, but I mean, in looking at it, doesn't seem like it's that much bigger. And I'm not sure if the student residency would count towards our population and, you know.
Yeah, I also think the density of the parcels situation in that area is very challenging. So I think that was another reason that at this time they weren't looked at to include,
Okay.
but definitely something that we can work towards.
So maybe that can be added to the, on the tail end to the next level.
Potentially.
As we do the staggered approach. Yes, Mr. Grijalva, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ronald Reagan once said, the scariest words you can hear are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And I think that was one of the reasons why the other annexation with Bay Acres failed. Because it was, for everybody that was involved with the city, it was a good idea. But there was a level of, that there wasn't trust from the residents in Bay Acres with the city hall workers, with people representing city hall. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face. So my suggestion is whoever's on these committees or championing the annexation, it has to be people that the public knows, that the public trusts. Can't be politicians, can't be, someone who just sits behind a desk at City Hall, and does a great job. It doesn't matter the job that you do to somebody that doesn't know you. And I think, again, those meetings were pretty heated. I went to one, was screaming and I didn't know who those people were, the majority of those people, and they didn't know who I was. So that would be one of my suggestions. We have to let the community members and these staggered annexations know who we are, who you are, and establish a relationship so there could be that communication, because you can give them all the facts, but if they don't trust you, it's gonna go one ear out the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grau. Mr. Shelton, did you have something else?
Yeah, one more comment. That Cochise College of States, we might have a big problem there because late sixties, early seventies, they sold all of these lots, and we have people that you don't know where they're at, and you do not because we thought Douglas was really gonna boom, it was gonna go north, and it didn't do that. And there's people all over Minnesota, everywhere that owns these. So that could present a huge problem there. And like Mr. Grajales was saying, and like I was saying, dear Bay Acres, we would like to cordially invite you to become part of the city of Douglas, something that's makes them feel good.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Shelton.
Shelton.
I appreciate that.
Mr.
I would like to, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please, Mrs. Morales.
I had a question for Ms. Gonzalez, and thank you for the presentation. So I know with Sunnyside and Bay Acres, we had started to have the meetings out there. So the signatures that have been obtained already, are we going to have to go back and have those residents again sign a petition for annexation? Or will those still be valid?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tempore Morales, I'm sorry. Yes, we would have to begin again with the collection of petition signatures. We cannot use the petition signatures that we've already collected.
All right. And do we have a time frame as to when we want to start this, or do we have to wait?
Like I mentioned during my presentation, these will be brought by resolution for approval to mayor and council, pending direction on which annexation you all would like to start first. And so we
Okay.
can get that worked out as quickly or as slowly as you give direction.
Okay, no, thank you for clarifying this, because sometimes it goes in and out and I'm not able to hear everything that everyone's saying. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Mrs. Morales.
Thank you very much. You know, I would personally like to see, and I think it'd be beneficial for the council to see realistic cost benefit analysis for each of these areas. And I would feel more comfortable making decisions with that information at hand. Some may be positive, some may be a little negative, but I think we need to look at that as stewards of our community to make sure that it makes sense. And again, I say realistic situation because, you know, it'd be easy to say, we need 10 more parks guys because we want to add a park out there where we're doing it. So therefore we need 10. But I think realistically, we need to look at, see what type of infrastructure that we feel comfortable with putting out there. And so that, again, we can talk knowledgeable and be able to express exactly where we're at and what we anticipate to do. And I think our track record as far as, securing grants and such for infrastructure improvement, I think is a big benefit to show them, we can't guarantee all these things, but we have been very successful in securing grants, but we can't do it until you're part of the city. So I would like to see those type of things, and not that we're in a race to get this done, but I would suggest that members of the council, again, keep looking at this, talking to some of your constituents, and if you have questions, please present them to Mr. Kiko so that next time that we meet, you can have a lot of those answers ready to go and be able to hopefully make a better informed decision.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you. Oh, Mr. Sheldon,
Yeah, one more comment.
please.
I've talked to 5 or 6 people I know really well out in Turtleville, and they're in favor of it. And that might be the only 5 or 6 out there that might be, but it seems like Turtleville would be the first one to approach. That's cool.
Yeah. As I say, the more information we have, the more we can analyze all those things and it is, you know, it would be, this is a major undertaking. I don't know how else to put it. That it's a major undertaking that will affect this council and future councils. But it's our way of planning the future of Douglas. And to me, that's critical because we have it there in front of us. And we need to be great stewards and be able to do this in the right way for the right reasons. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6B. Presentation discussion on continuation of the zoning code text and map amendments. I know we went through this fairly quickly last time, and so we've invited Mr. Osborne back to discuss a couple of those areas a little bit more in depth, and hopefully we can have some meaningful questions for you. Mr. Osborne?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Last night, we had the continuation of the public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And a number of things were resolved last night. There are, though, a few things that we brought to you last time, a month ago, for map amendments that the city was proposing relating to overlays. We pulled those out from the Planning Commission's agenda because of notification requirements that we have. Some of it is related to state requirements, but there's also some requirements that we place that put a really large cost burden on us. The first item is the East Side Addition Block 12 Zoning Districts Map Amendment, privately proposed for property that's located between 12th and 13th Streets across from the Food City Shopping Center. 10 parcels totaling 3.5 acres approximately that are zoned limited commercial currently. A number of parcels have been developed for single family residential, which is not allowed by our zoning code. One of the parcels was a former church and also an event center. The proposals for zoning it to multifamily residential, which was consistent with the general plan. Here's a look at the parcels. They're outlined thickly in black, just across from Food City and just north of the Alco Theater, which is zoned multifamily residential. Here's a look around the streetscape and the eastern boundary of Block 12. Then looking back toward the west, that church, and then back toward the shopping center and some of these vacant properties that are yet to be developed. Though there is a foundation in place at the corner of 13th and San Antonio. And there are a few other single family residences that have been built over the last 10, 15 years. Multifamily residential development across the street on the south side of 12th. And the proposal again is for multifamily residential, which staff found from policies in the general plan supporting this area as a community services node. We don't have a community services node zoning district, which was also one of the general plan policies. We're addressing that in a different approach, but for this property to be zoned multifamily residential seemed consistent with the general plan, increasing the number of activity units, the number of housing units, whether it's a commercial space or what have you, would be a positive support for the existing commercial area across the street. And so I won't go through each of these policies that's in your packet or was in your packet last month. It's just that we submitted the recommendation for approval, and at last night's public hearing, there was a significant testimony against, and the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended denial. And so that's where it stands. Any questions?
Mr. Osborne, would you mind expanding just briefly what the objections were?
The objections were for any housing that would be multifamily. Concerns about the kind of people that multifamily housing would bring to the city. And there were questions too about property development standards. The multifamily residential zoning district allows for single-family detached housing, but it also allows for duplexes, multiplexes, and so forth. But looking at it from staff's perspective, is the current zoning limited commercial is not really feasible because the development standards for that require great setbacks, on-site parking, landscaping, and things that basically would chew up every parcel to where it wouldn't really be developable. So it's a little bit of a quandary. And that's, again, what we were hearing was the concern about development standards and properties being built too close together and too close to residential neighborhoods around the property, but there's already multifamily residential around the property too.
Anyone else have any questions or comments in this particular part? Hearing none, Mr. Osborne, would you please continue?
Okay, and so the next proposal that was before us was another privately proposed zoning districts map amendment. And that was located along East 23rd Street, just east of A Avenue. Is the Moreno Overlock Block 16 lots 6 through 9 zoning districts map amendment. 4 parcels totaling just over a half an acre, zone mobile home residence, located within a FEMA designated floodplain. There was 1 parcel that was already developed for single family residential, which is in violation of code. And but what we found is that there aren't a lot of mobile homes that are actually coming into the mobile home residence zoning district there. We've only had 3 mobile home residence location permits in the last 12 years. And so the property owner, the properties are indicated here. They're slightly highlighted in turquoise. Those 4 parcels were approved through a parcel split application not too long ago at the end of January. The proposal is again located just a little bit to the east of A Avenue. And here's an existing house that was built. And then there's a couple of parcels to the east of that. And then we look down 23rd Street. The proposal would make for single family residential 6,000 square foot minimum lot size, which is approximately what we have there with the approved parcel split. And there's policy supporting affordable, affordable housing development and variety of housing types, single family, multifamily, and others to meet the market need for people who are working, people who are having a difficult time finding housing in Douglas. So the recommendation, since there's a demand for new residential development, is greater than our supply. And the availability of a variety of different housing types is something that's very important to some people in the community. Availability of mobile home units in good condition is decreasing, while other factory built housing is becoming more available. The demand for detached or multifamily residential is also increasing. But our mobile home residence zoning district doesn't allow for anything but mobile homes. It's very specific about that. So if we wanted to see any kind of other factory built housing, we wouldn't be able to permit that by zoning. Staff is recommending approval. And the Planning and Zoning Commission approved or made a recommendation of approval to Mayor and Council 4-0. Any questions?
Any questions?
Mayor?
Yes, please, Mr. Guerrero.
I know that Mr. Moreno has been having a headache about this. I know that it's mobile home only, but when we desperately need the housing and somebody wants to build houses, it's not going to decrease the property value around them like a mobile home would. So for future, I think we need to be more open, because if it's gonna cause these type of headaches, and I wanted to build a home here, I'm gonna say, well, then why do I want to build in Douglas? It's gonna be too difficult. I have to go through all these stages. We have to be more business friendly, but also more friendly to development. So, I hope that, as far as this is going, it's Mr. Moreno's happy about it, but I do think that we need to be more, compassionate. I guess maybe you want to say it that way to the situation also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, please, Mrs. Costa.
I respectfully disagree with that. There's zoning codes for reasons. I don't understand why there was a permit issued to a zone that didn't allow for such building. Yes, I understand that we do have a need for housing, but you know, we do have these codes and yes, the process goes, you know, it takes a little longer for this to get rezoned, but if it was rezoned, if it was zoned already for something specific, I think that, you know, it needs to be followed for whatever reason that was the zoning from, you know, whenever it was zoned back in the day. And we should follow those zoning requirements to be in compliance as well. I mean, it just, I'm not a rule breaker, so I think that we need to follow whatever zoning is currently, and if it needs to be changed, it needs to be changed, but it shouldn't be overlooked.
Thank you, Mrs. Costa. Anyone else? I too would like to see, you know, as you drive that area of town, there's a ton of single family, you know, foundation homes that are scattered throughout there. How they got there, who knows? And I think that's probably why the building department may have been a little bit lax in the past because there's so many out there. What's the harm, you know, kind of thing. But I agree with Mrs. Costa 100%. If that's not what we need out there, then let's change it. And so I appreciate the process of getting this done quickly so that he can continue, as Mr. Grijalva said, business-friendly type atmosphere to be able to get his project going. But I would also hope that it's followed up with maybe looking at the entire area and whether or not we have a joint use type of situation. How does that look?
Crystal ball. You've actually looked into the crystal ball. It's one of the items on tonight's agenda is to create the overlay, an overlay zoning district that would, if applied on a map, if we adopt some other changes in our next agenda item, or through our next agenda item, then our notification process would be less costly and also more expedient, that we could actually look at providing that flexibility. Because we had a police trainee in our office for a couple of months, and it was great. He got out in the field and did a visual survey and gave us all kinds of information about what was actually out there. And we do have a lot of, you know, foundation houses or even mobile homes that have been converted through permanent foundations and also siding additions and other things. Having flexibility is what that area seems to be about. And so one of our proposals would probably, looking ahead, will address that question.
And I agree. Again, I can't state enough. If that's the way it is now, we need to follow it. But also if staff comes to us and say, hey, there needs to be a change. We're seeing this out here, then we need to listen to it.
And
Yes, please, Mr. Valdenegro.
What are we doing about the vacant mobile home? Or parts that we have right there on Spring First and here? South side, southeast corner.
We've had a number of questions about derelict structures and dilapidated structures in terms of code compliance, but also possibly abatement. But that's a process that we're still exploring that right now.
We're working with the legal department also to see how far we can go and how quick. And that's another thing that we may need to change our rules to be able to make sure that we can do that quickly and efficiently. Mr. Costa, do you have something else?
yes, I just wanted to add, it's not that I wouldn't want the changes. It just seems that this is creating a lot of headaches for a lot of people and that the rules aren't being followed. And now we're kind of having to go back and in a almost like a expedited manner, look at these zoning issues. So that's, that's the problem that I see with this.
The pace of our applications has increased greatly since I began here. We are having a lot of folks who want to build, want to expand their existing homes, are interested in second homes or accessory dwelling units. But new home construction has also been on the rise. And so it's not something, a pressure that's going to relieve. So we are looking again at our regulations and where we might have a little bit more authority administratively. That's going to be our next item up. We can talk a little bit more about that.
And that's why, I really appreciate Mr. Osborne because he has a vast experience at different levels. And he's a good resource because he's seen these areas and see how, what flexibility, because that's been the task at hand. We want to be business friendly and we want to be able to allow these things within reason. We don't want to devalue anybody's property, but we also want to be able to be flexible. And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Is that it? Or do you have another item?
Yes.
Please.
Next on the agenda was a zoning code amendment, text amendment, 2023-1 administrative codes text amendment. We call it administrative codes because it includes the zoning code, but it also, we expanded it since our last meeting to include section 2.32.030, which is in the Planning and Zoning Commission and Department section of Title II, where it includes a requirement in its statement of the duties to the Planning and Zoning Commission that the city council would hold its final public hearing and take action. That second public hearing, one being held by the mayor and council, is not a requirement by statute. And so if mayor and council so wished by statute, they could adopt a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission without having a public hearing unless there's a protest. That would greatly reduce our time spent waiting for publication and doing the 15-day notice, after publication in the paper, which usually ends up being 21 days. And so we could really, again, when we have need for change and it's desirable for the whole community, the mayor and council, we're looking at part of these amendments to remove any language where it says mayor and council would have to hold its public hearing. We're only changing that to where it's, if there's a protest against a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, then scheduling a public hearing is what statute would require. The other thing that's been amended, and particularly for notifications and petitioning, requiring petitions for property owners or for properties that are being proposed for rezones, that is not a statutory requirement. And so we're suggesting to remove that. If it's something that somebody doesn't like, what we found even last night, there are folks who weren't even living close to proposal who were testifying strongly against the proposal for change. And so our public hearing process provides that access. The other requirement too that we have that is not statutory is certified mailing of adjacent contained and also of neighboring property owners within 300 feet. That's not a requirement in state law. And so we're proposing to change that to first-class mailing, which is required by state law. That will cut the cost of mailing for all of our proposals that we want to move forward for that flexibility from $4.15 per residence or per property to 63 cents. So that's a great savings to us. And we won't have to petition 359 people in the Overlock, Stettler, Ewell Klein editions. We won't have to do that. We will also won't have to petition the 1,957 property owners or parcel owners or parcels in the mixed use infill overlay, which we also wanted to propose changes for to increase flexibility there. But we would have to mail to every property owner in there, and that's 1,957. So these things will come with cost. Getting back to our original proposal, the meat of that was, again, that we would also have administrative interpretation power in this office. with appeals going to the city manager first, and then could go to the Board of Adjustment as currently in code. The section on variances would be moved to general provisions, just like it is for other planning and zoning processes. Instead of being tucked away in the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Adjustment is still the responsible party for variances. And planning staff would be for interpretations and what might be called minor variances. In order to avoid any statutory issues, is we'd be looking at administrative design I think it's a design departure, something of that nature. Parcel splits, combinations, and lot line adjustments, will make sure that those are all spelled out in their code, because it's been a kind of a question mark for a lot of folks, but the city does have the requirement that we approve before somebody could get a building permit. If they split their property to where it's substandard in size, that ends up being a problem. Home occupations, we've expanded that to allow for some administrative interpretation on some of the uses, especially if it's like a crafting use. Also separating or allowing for separate structures like detached garages or storage on the property to be used for such a thing as, carving wood, things like that. The city planner is replacing building inspector as a zoning code officer, the zoning administrator by statute. Plan review process is made clear. It isn't really spelled out clearly in our code, but it will be now if it's approved. And the building and permit and inspection fees section is reorganized for clarity to place the calculation of project valuation up at the top instead of tucked down the bottom, to make sure that there's numbering for all of those things as well, so that we can cite our code really clearly. And again, we already talked about the notification requirements, just making those align with the statute, making sure that we're not going above and beyond to the detriment of our community. Any questions?
Any questions by the council?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Grijalva.
Mr. Osborne, I like the idea of adopting just the planning and zoning recommendations. Not only does it cut time, but also, when we place people on, when we approve people to be on boards, these are not people that we just pick out of a hat. It's people that we know are qualified for these situations, that we can trust to make these decisions. It's the same thing with every other board and committee. So I like that idea of cutting the time, and we work quicker and, eliminate as much bureaucracy as we can. So thank you.
You're welcome. And again, if there is a protest, then it goes to the process that we basically have now, but it's not an out requirement as it is now.
Thank you.
The
Anyone
Planning and
else?
Zoning Commission voted 4-0 in support of the recommendation of staff. So they'd like to see these move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor.
Yes, please, Mrs. Costa.
I'm just, so I have a couple questions. On here you have city planner replacing building inspector as zoning code officer. So in this case, you're replacing the building inspector and changing the title over to zoning code officer. Is that?
It's a zoning administrator by statute. And so we have a section in Title 10, or rather Article 10, in the zoning code administration, that we're expanding that to be administration, interpretation, and enforcement, just so it's really clear as to what's going to be found there. So it spells out the duties as well of the code compliance officer or code enforcement officer, and kind of some of the duties that they have are then spelled out in it. I think it's Article 17.14. And so we've basically made the people who are responsible for it is not the building inspector. And we don't have a building inspector, but even if we did, we would have a code compliance officer handling code compliance. And for planning and zoning, we would have a city planner. And it could also be a designee thereof. So we do add that in there. So if it's necessary that somebody's on vacation, that somebody could be designated to handle those duties.
It just seems to me that we probably need more of these zoning administrative officers to be able to facilitate these permits, especially if annexation happens and then port of entry happens and all of these developments that could be coming in the future. And as you said, you have tons of applications already. So, you know, it just seems like we probably need to look at, you know, building, I guess, team of zoning code officers. And then my second question is, as far as the appeals, so, and maybe this is a question for Dennis, but if we have the city manager approving something that has already gone through zoning code officer or administrative officer, what is the liability that that's putting on our city? If city manager is approving something against the zoning codes and policies.
Mr. Fitzgibbon?
All right. Councilwoman Acosta, I think that any interpretation she would give would be, I think, consistent with the zoning code policy. There might be a different way to look at it, and there might be, but I don't see her going against the zoning code policy. Really, the zoning administrator is going to be the person who's going to define, you know, kind of the gray areas. And so this just gives people an opportunity to go to the city manager if they disagree with the zoning administrator. But if council gives her that authority, I think that's legal. I don't think there's any potential issues where the city would have liability for that.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgibbon.
And I'd also like to add is that there is in the process for the appeals, it's an application process. So there's, again, going to be some documentation that these people ask for different relief. And we're going to be able to show, here's the reasons why we've made these interpretations or the appeal decision is made.
Thank you. And again, it's not anything on current administration, but always, you know, looking into the future and, you know, what we're told as far as policymakers to look into the future. And, you know, we're not all sitting here. There's different people interpreting different ways. So that's why these questions, I have these questions right now.
Thank you. Very well put. Anyone else? Hearing none. Next item.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, and finally is the under D. So we're gonna have a little presentation. It should be fairly brief. For the innovative community overlays, we're looking at introducing 3 separate overlays, all with the same intent, which is to recognize existing nonconformities on properties that are residential use in commercial zones or commercial use in residential zones, but also to provide some opportunity so that these things could be possibly redeveloped, infill developed, in any number of ways. Again, looking at our mixed use infill development overlay zone as kind of a model for it, but getting a little more specific. And again, providing clarity about the process for application and for design, not really relying on design review, but instead having a process that at pre-application, somebody would come to staff and we would discuss their proposal, give them what our minimum requirements are. And then the next step for them would be to reach out to their neighbors. And so their infill project, they would actually be reaching out to their neighbors, just like in the mixed use infill overlay, what it says, but currently says in that overlay that we need to provide the notification. We're kind of turning that around and making it on the applicant. The applicant should be the one reaching out to the community and saying, this is what I see, this is what I would like to do. Does this make sense to you? Can we work things out? They come back to us, the applicant, with their proof of having done this outreach, whether it's petition signed or certified mail cards. But they would be one of those 2 things. It's either the certified mail route, or it's going to be actually reaching out to your neighbors and talking about why you would like to do this and how this could work out for everybody's best benefit. So I've pretty much summarized what's in here, the setback requirements would be fairly minimal in these overlays. Looking at opportunities for splitting parcels to less than 6,000 square feet in size, with 3,000 being the minimum. And for the overlays that are commercial and mixed use, the setback would be 0 feet from the property lines, but a 5-foot minimum setback from other structures, whether on-site or off-site. So really, we're looking at the physical environment. What do we see? And that being the primary driver of our applications. Because we're looking at a lot of folks wanting to have accessory dwelling units of various kinds, wanting to convert a garage into an apartment or a residence for the mother. By statute, we don't have, I don't think we have any regulations in our code, but we also don't really have anything in statute that really supports that kind of approach where we say these kinds of people you can have and these kinds of people you can't. Even though we hear that in the community, it's not something that we can really support. But there's also really strong push at the legislature to kind of take away our ability to zone residential. And so I'm really a little bit concerned about that. We're providing something different that would give flexibility for the mobile home residents zoning district over there in Overlock. We were going to propose an innovative community residential zone that would allow for any type of housing in there. But again, they would have to be reaching out to their neighbors and talking to them. Also allowing for adaptive reuse. We have regulations currently, like along A Avenue, that call for 40-foot setbacks from the street. And if it's a property that's at a corner, or it's like a, like some of the old gas stations that are tire shops, those are all non-conforming. They're legal non-conforming, but they can't really do anything to expand, not by our code. These overlays would allow for properties like that to actually continue as they are, to improve, and possibly even to expand their operation and have a different variety of uses as well. So again, the notification goes to the applicant. That would be the applicant's responsibility. And the international building codes, engineering standards, and FEMA regulations and state health laws would still apply. So the regulations that they have, we still have to follow those. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Did planning and zoning take this issue up also last night?
They did, and they recommended approval for nil.
Thank you. Anyone? Appreciate it, Mr. Osborne.
You're very welcome. Thank you all.
And again, if you have any questions, you think of anything, shoot them to Mrs. Urquijo, and then she'll pass them down the line and make sure we get a response back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 7, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Acosta, thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second, let's
Motion-
waiting for Margaret.
I was waiting for you.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. We got it covered. Motion by
Okay.
Mr. Costa, second by Mr. Shelton to adjourn this special meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed by nay? Ayes have it. We stand adjourned at 6:55.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, you guys. Thanks.